4 people have died from the Indian COVID variant. After a spike in cases, second vaccines could be given sooner, and the government says it will rule nothing out to stop the spread.
We take nothing off the table. We will do everything, whatever it takes, to bring the infection rates under control.
In Wales, the easing of some restrictions are halted to try to prevent the new variant spreading. Also this lunchtime, Portugal will welcome British tourists from Monday, despite extending its state of emergency till the end of May. Amazon expands its empire here with 10,000 new jobs. And Friends Reunited, the one where they get back together, airs this month. But why are so many classics getting a reboot?
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Kylie Pentelow.
Good afternoon. It's been confirmed this lunchtime that 4 people in the UK have now died from the Indian COVID variant. There's been a spike in cases here, mainly in parts of England, and now the government is considering a raft of measures to try to stop its spread. Second vaccines could be brought forward, and the vaccines minister said today nothing is off the table to deal with it. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan has the latest.
New cases of the B16172 Indian variant have more than doubled in a week, and this is the first level of response, surge testing in Sefton and Merseyside. There's no indication the government will delay Monday's reopening, but June's relaxation is not guaranteed.
We take nothing off the table. We will do everything, whatever it takes, to bring the infection rates under control, to make sure we control this virus, to transition it from being a pandemic to endemic post-June and beyond.
And the Prime Minister has said the reimposition of restrictions at local or regional level is a possibility, to the dismay of the Mayor of Greater Manchester.
My heart sank yesterday when I heard the Prime Minister talking about local lockdowns. I mean, honestly, for people here who've really been through it in the last 9 months, because we've been under restrictions for 9 months, businesses that have geared up and are ready to go on Monday, the talk of local lockdowns will have really demoralised people.
So far, this Indian variant does not appear to be more resistant to vaccines or to produce more severe disease, but it is highly transmissible and so could infect a large number of people.
Even if vaccines prevent 90% of hospitalisations, and we see even in elderly people, and we still see a huge increase in case numbers, then 10% of a huge number is still quite a big number, and that is the concern.
And the rapidly spreading new variant is an unwelcome surprise in areas where the situation had been improving.
As an area we were very, very low, then all of a sudden there was a scare at the local swimming baths, and before you know that, 2 schools were closed, and therefore I think people are a bit bewildered.
A bit worried, really, now this new virus is hitting the town. I think we all have a civic duty to come and get tested.
The main areas of concern are in northwest England and London, but surge testing has now been deployed to 15 areas across England to try and identify cases of the variant. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
And the Prime Minister will give us an update on the situation this afternoon from Downing Street, and you can watch that live on our website and on our Twitter, Facebook and YouTube channels. Meanwhile, the relaxing of some restrictions in Wales is being put on hold because of concerns about the spread of the Indian variant. On Monday, pubs, cafes and restaurants will welcome customers back through their doors with the return of indoor hospitality as the alert level is lowered. But people are being told to avoid foreign holidays, even though they may be allowed. Well, ITV Wales political editor Adrian Masters is in Newport for us. Adrian, a cautious approach being adopted by the Welsh Government here.
Kylie, you'll know that Mark Drakeford has become known for that cautious approach and criticised for it by some. But if he had been wavering in that, the fact that this was his first press conference announcing changes in the restrictions since a resounding election win last week will have decided it will have decided him in that approach. As it happens, he's pretty much in the same sort of place that the UK government is for England, with announcing a set of changes for Monday, but then looking perhaps at what might be able to happen in June. He had said he had planned to go further than the announcements that are being made for Monday, but didn't. And why? Because of that Indian variant. This is what the First Minister said.
This new variant appears to spread easily from person to person, just like the Kent variant, which is now widespread in the UK, but it may travel even faster.
So there are 26 cases in Wales at the moment, and the First Minister says they are being monitored very closely. He has got a range of measures that he can use, including targeted vaccinations. But that caution is being tempered with a bit of positivity. You mentioned holidays. Yes, international travel will be allowed in Wales from Monday, but the Welsh Government is advising people not to take those holidays unless it's absolutely necessary. I asked him if that meant people should feel guilty or would they be treated as being irresponsible. He said no, it was not a case of being treated as irresponsible or made to feel guilty, but that people would be better advised to stay in Wales for their holiday this year. Modelling by Swansea University, said the First Minister, predicted that a third wave in the late summer is inevitable. So he won't say that any easing of any measures is irreversible.
Okay, Adrian Masters, thank you. In the last hour, it's been confirmed Portugal will welcome British tourists from Monday. The country will be put on the green list of countries that Britons can visit without having to quarantine on their return. It's led to a surge of bookings for flights and hotels in the Algarve. But the Portuguese government has decided to extend its coronavirus rules until at least May the 30th. Well, lots to discuss then with Professor of Public Health Linda Bold. Thanks very much for joining me this lunchtime, Linda. What's your take then on foreign holidays, given the news this lunchtime about the rise in cases of the Indian COVID variant?
I think we're in a very fragile situation. We need to recognise we've made huge progress in reducing the incidence and the prevalence of this disease. But I think one of the government's 4 tests for continuing to ease was that they wouldn't have any variants of concern that would cause real problems. We don't know enough about this B16172. We think it's more transmissible. Public Health England released a new analysis last night, but no evidence yet on disease severity or vaccine escape. But I think if there was one thing I would point to where we absolutely need continued caution, it is international travel. And I know that's difficult at the current time, but I think that's just the reality looking at what's happening around the globe.
And we know obviously that restrictions are easing on Monday. Are we likely to see more cases, do you think, in terms of this new variant?
Well, I think we're likely to see more cases just generally. I mean, we've seen an over 40% rise in cases in Scotland here over the last week. This is what happens when you ease up. Every part of the UK varies in terms of what's open at the moment. So we will see that. But the key thing is, does it transfer to more people in hospital in due course? Or setting aside the concerns about this variant, one of the key tests will be, even if there's a slight rise in cases, does that result in disease severity? And the vaccines are really hopefully breaking those chains of transmissions. That's what we've seen to date. We hope that will be sustained. But the government's always said across the UK, the different governments, that they need a reverse gear if they have to have one. But I think it's more likely we will ease, but we'll see the need for tailored local approaches in particular parts of the country.
Lots of people are pinning their hopes, of course, on June the 21st. Do you think that date could move?
Possibly. I mean, I think the government always said it would be data, not dates, but then we had a lot of dates. The sectors that are opening now, it's hugely important that they do so safely and they get back on track. And we want that to be steady progress. So it really doesn't matter whether it's June the 21st or a little bit later. The main thing is the things that open now don't want to shut again. And we just need to try and monitor the situation. I think the fact that everything was absolutely going to be back to normal by June the 21st, which was an original statement, I think even the more ambitious, optimistic policymakers have stepped back from that slightly. So let's see what happens in the next few weeks. I remain very optimistic overall, but there are clearly a few pinch points that we really need to watch.
OK, Professor Linda Bold, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Moving on, and online shopping, which has surged since the lockdown, has led to a bonanza for many internet retailers, and none more so than the juggernaut that is Amazon. It's doing so well that it's creating 10,000 permanent jobs spread across several places, including the northeast of England, which, like the rest of the country, is seeing the final closure of its Debenhams stores this weekend. Well, let's go live to our business editor, Joel Hills, who's in Newcastle for us this lunchtime. The tale of retail rise and demise, this, it seems, Joel.
Yeah, these are the last days of Debenhams. The department store behind me closes for the last time on Saturday evening. But while shops in the city centre are really up against it and jobs are being lost a few miles out of the city, they're being created. Amazon is building yet another distribution centre as it tries to keep up with runaway online shopping demand. The company will create 10,000 new jobs this year. Most of the new roles will be at its network of 28 distribution centres across the UK. Amazon is promising private medical insurance, subsidised meals and pay well above the national minimum wage. But unions continue to criticise working conditions. Unite speaks of bullying, mandatory overtime, surveillance and an exhausting set of production targets at Amazon's warehouse. The company, though, takes a different view.
I've been country manager of Amazon UK for the past 6 months. I've had the opportunity to come and visit many of our sites, and the feedback I get and what I see is overwhelmingly a positive experience.
So, Joel, fair to say Amazon's benefited from coronavirus?
Well, look, Amazon's business was on fire before COVID-19. What happened during lockdown is it managed to find an even higher gear as spending moved online. Shopping habits have changed dramatically over the last 15 months and changed, it looks, rather permanently, to the great advantage of online retailers and the great disadvantage of traditional high street retailers. Global data estimates that £4 in every £10 that's spent online today is spent at Amazon. No other retailer comes close to that. Everything is happening so fast that the tax system is struggling to keep up. As a global company, Amazon can use corporation tax rules to minimise its bills in a way that many other British big retailers cannot. Amazon pays much less in business rates on its warehouses than traditional British retailers do on their multitude of shops. Now, the government is promising reform. It's looking at this issue, but it's taking time. If there were a quick fix, it would have happened by now. This isn't easy, but change, when it does come, will come far too late for Debenhams.
Joel, thank you very much. The business empire, which includes Liberty Steel, which employs 5,000 people across England, Scotland and Wales, is facing an investigation by the Serious Fraud Office. The SFO is looking into suspected fraudulent trading and money laundering at companies headed by Sanjeev Gupta. Well, to our political correspondent Libby Vina now, who's at the Serious Fraud Office for us. Libby, how significant is this business?
Well, Mr. Gupta is a very wealthy businessman who became known as the saviour of steel in this country. But the Serious Fraud Office investigation now raises very serious questions about the future of his business empire. As you say, Liberty Steel is the name for the plants that he bought up over the last few years in this country, employing about 3,000 people, and another 2,000 have jobs in other parts of his business empire. A short time ago, the former business secretary, Alok Sharma, suggested that there is reason to fear for their jobs.
My thoughts are always with anyone who is facing a loss of their job. It'll be a difficult time for lots of people across the country, and of course there is always support available from government, Department of Work and Pensions, to ensure that support is there. In terms of an investigation that's ongoing, I know that you'll appreciate that I can't comment on that.
Well, Mr. Gupta's empire was already in trouble because its main financial backer was Greensill Capital, which you may remember went bankrupt back in March. Now, yesterday, David Cameron, the former Prime Minister who was giving evidence to MPs about his role in lobbying for Greensill, did suggest that the two companies had a symbiotic relationship. A very worrying time, I think, for those who are employed in Mr. Gupta's empire.
Libby Vina, thank you. Next this lunchtime, you may know him for his award-winning television programmes. Also a celebrated author, and an adaptation of his book, Black and British, A Forgotten History for Children, has become an instant bestseller, winning the prize for Best Children's Illustrated and Non-Fiction Book of the Year. And I'm delighted to say that he joins me now. Thanks so much for talking to me, David. Can you just tell me what you were taught about Black British history as a child?
Yeah, that's very easy. I was taught absolutely nothing. There was no discussion about Black history, about the connections between this country and Africa. In what I studied through most of my education, we did a little bit of the empire at A level, but a tiny amount.
Why then do you think these stories have been missing from education for so long?
Well, I think we've airbrushed out parts of British history that we are uncomfortable with, and to a certain extent that's understandable, because some of these stories are really difficult, about empire, about slavery, about the violence of empire. But the problem is that for 14% of the population who are a minority, those histories are family histories, and those histories explain why we're here. They explain why the country looks the way it does. They're also, without them, we can't properly understand British history. We can't make sense of the Industrial Revolution without talking about slavery in America. We can't make sense of the wealth of the 18th century without talking about slavery in the Caribbean. We can't make sense of the 19th century without talking about empire and Africa. So these histories are they're just necessary.
And this all started out, didn't it, as an adult's book for you? But I believe it was mums and dads who actually asked for a children's version. What was some of the comments that you got from them?
Well, when I published the adults book in 2016, almost instantly I kept being stopped on the tube or on the train by people, parents, black parents, white parents, of white kids, mixed race kids, black kids. And they would say, look, we like your book, but it's 600 pages long. You need to write a book for children. And I would smile and think that was an interesting idea, but did nothing about it. But it kept happening. And so I came to the conclusion that they were right. And I went to see my publisher and told them, look, this just keeps happening. This many people can't be wrong. And so in 2019, we planned to write this book.
And presumably it's a book for all children, and I expect adults might read it too, along with their children.
Well, they do. I mean, we were all immensely pressured for time. And I think there's a lot of people who, would like to know more about this subject and other subjects. And sometimes a book that's aimed at sort of, kids around 12 into their teens is a great way in. And I have to admit, I've read a few children's books on, science is not my area. I'm not very good at it. A children's science book is about my level. And I'm quite unashamed to read children's books when they're going to help me get access to a subject that I want to know more about.
And finally, you must be really pleased that you've won the award.
Yeah, I'm really astonished. I didn't intend to write a children's book. It wasn't a plan. As I said, I was sort of instructed to by parents. I'm very glad I listened to those parents and that they accosted me on the street and asked me to write this book. So I'm very grateful to them and to my publishers.
OK, well, it's lovely to speak to you today. David Olusogi, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Ireland's health service has temporarily shut down all of its IT systems because of a significant ransomware attack. And one of Europe's busiest maternity hospitals is badly affected, as most appointments have been cancelled. Ireland's health service executive says life-saving equipment in hospitals is not affected, and it is largely an IT system issue. Now, they've been on a break, but now the gang are finally back together. The highly anticipated Friends reunion special will air on the 27th of May with the full original cast and some special guests too. And it's not the only reboot of a classic TV show hitting our screens. So why are they all making a comeback? To explain, here's Jonathan Brown.
For 10 years and more than 230 episodes, Friends was a companion to millions. Now, 17 years on, they're getting back together. This trailer teasing the Friends reunion has already racked up millions of views online. One of its stars, Courtney Cox, said on Instagram, "This kind of thing doesn't happen every year, or even every 10 or 15 years. I feel so blessed to have had the chance to reunite with my friends, and it was better than ever."
They totally match! They look great!
The series, telling the story of 6 friends in New York City, evolved into America's most watched sitcom. Before the cast left the set for good in 2004. The reunion won't see them reprise their roles, though. Instead, they'll appear as themselves alongside guests like James Corden, David Beckham and Lady Gaga.
So many people around the world have always wanted this to happen, so why not give the viewers what they've always wanted? And actually, I think it's amazing that they've done this in this year during a pandemic.
It's not the only big-name comeback to be announced by streaming services, with Emmy Award-winning Sex and the City set for a reboot, while Paramount Plus is bringing back its sitcom about radio psychiatrist Fraser Crane after 17 years.
If you have shows that have been on for years that everybody knows, it does away with all the really hard work. You don't have to convince people to watch it, they already know what it's on about. Marketing is a whole lot easier, just to say, here it is, and people will sign up.
The Friends reunion will no doubt bring viewers back together when it airs later this month, with some hoping this could be a step towards more episodes. Jonathan Brown at ITV News.
There will be lots of people looking forward to that. OK, before we go, the tale of the cat who's definitely used up one of its 9 lives. Take a look at this. Video taken by the Chicago Fire Department shows smoke coming from broken open windows on the 5th floor of a burning building. Then, after a couple of minutes, a black cat, there it goes, appears to test the side of the building with its front paws before jumping. Amazingly, the cat wasn't injured, and luckily neither was anyone who was in the building. Now, apparently they are still looking for that lucky cat's owner. Let's hope that they find him. And that's it this lunchtime. I'll be back with the evening news. That's at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather. But from all of us here, enjoy your afternoon. Bye-bye.